The first time I realized my marriage was ending, it wasn't in private. It wasn't during a fight in our living room or a whispered argument in bed. It was under bright lights, surrounded by people who had no idea they were watching the final moments of something that had taken me years to build. The invitation had sounded harmless enough. A company event, a panel discussion followed by a reception. My wife, Lena, worked hard for her role, and I had learned over the years to show up smiling, supportive, invisible when needed. I bought a new shirt, practiced small talk in my head, and told myself that being there mattered. The venue was a modern auditorium with glass walls and clean lines. The kind of place where everything echoes, voices, applause, even silence. I noticed immediately how confident Lena looked when she walked ahead of me, heels clicking, shoulders straight. She didn't reach for my hand. She hadn't in months. Inside, rows of chairs faced a raised stage. People were already seated, murmuring, checking their phones. Names flashed on a screen behind the podium. Lena's name appeared among them. I felt a small swell of pride. Or maybe habit. I took a seat in the middle row. She didn't look back to see where I was sitting. The panel began smoothly. Executives spoke about growth, leadership, vision. When Lena's turn came, the applause was louder than I expected. She smiled easily, thanked the moderator, and began speaking with a calm authority I barely recognized anymore. She was brilliant. There was no denying it. As she talked about teamwork and loyalty, I thought about the nights she came home late and the weekends she worked through. I thought about the dinners eaten alone and the conversations cut short. I told myself that sacrifice was part of love. Then the question started. One man in the front row stood up, smiling too widely. He introduced himself as a senior director, someone I recognized from the way Lena's tone softened when she said his name at home. He asked her about navigating pressure and personal support systems. Lena laughed lightly before answering. She said, "Honestly, you learn who really supports you when things get difficult." The audience nodded, engaged. She continued, "Some people say they're there for you, but when your growth challenges their comfort, they pull back." There was a ripple of knowing laughter. My chest tightened. I told myself not to be sensitive. This was professional, abstract. Then she said it. I realized at some point that I had to stop shrinking to make someone else feel bigger. The words landed like a blow. Her eyes scanned the audience as she spoke, confident, assured. They passed over me without stopping. Not once did she look in my direction. The moderator smiled approvingly. That's powerful. Applause filled the room. Loud. Enthusiastic. People were clapping for the story of my failure. I sat there frozen, every sound amplified. The clapping felt endless. My hands rested uselessly in my lap. I wondered if anyone could see the way my jaw tightened, the way my breathing had changed. She had just rewritten our marriage in front of strangers, and I was the unnamed obstacle in her success story. More questions followed. More polished answers. Each one carving something away. By the time the panel ended, I felt hollowed out. At the reception, people crowded around her. Compliments flew freely. So inspiring. So brave. You said what so many of us feel. I stood near a table of untouched food, watching her laugh with people who knew her only in fragments. She never introduced me. Not once. A woman beside me said, "She's incredible. Are you a colleague?" I paused. The honest answer hovered on my tongue. "I'm her husband," I said quietly. The woman blinked, surprised.
"Oh."
She didn't mention.
"No," I said.
She didn't. Across the room, Lena caught my eye briefly, just long enough to register recognition. Then she turned back to her audience, her smile uninterrupted. That was the moment something inside me finally stopped trying. On the drive home, the silence was thick. City lights streaked past the windows. I waited for her to speak, to explain, to soften what she had done. She didn't. Instead, she checked her phone and said, "That went really well tonight." I nodded. After a moment, she added, "You seemed quiet." There it was. An opening. A small one but real. "You told a room full of people that I held you back," I said. She sighed, already tired. I didn't say your name. You didn't have to. She stared out the window. You're taking it personally. I think you made it personal. Her jaw tightened. I can't apologize for my truth. The word truth hung between us, heavy and sharp. When we got home, she went straight to the bedroom. I stayed in the living room, sitting in the dark. The applause replayed in my head, over and over. That night, I slept on the couch. In the days that followed, something shifted. Or maybe it finally broke. Lena moved through the house like a guest. Polite. Distant. We spoke only when necessary. When I tried to talk about the panel, she brushed it off as me being insecure. I needed that moment, she said. You should be proud of me. I was proud of her. That was the tragedy of it. I just hadn't realized how small she had been willing to make me in order to feel tall. The truth surfaced slowly, as it often does. Messages left open on her laptop. Late-night calls she stepped outside to take. Familiar names that now carried new weight. There was someone else. Not just emotionally. Not just professionally. When I finally confronted her, she didn't deny it. I didn't plan for this, she said. But I won't apologize for choosing myself. I asked her when it started. She hesitated. Just for a second. Before the panel, she admitted. The room felt smaller. So when you stood on that stage, I said, you already knew. She looked away. That audience hadn't just witnessed my humiliation. They had witnessed the end of something she had already walked away from. I thought back to the applause, to the nodding heads, to the way she spoke about loyalty while practicing betrayal. I wondered how many people in that room would still be clapping if they knew the full story. But it didn't matter. They weren't part of my life.
She was.
And she was already gone. The separation was quiet. No dramatic arguments. No slammed doors. Just paperwork, divided shelves, empty spaces where shared routines used to live. People asked what happened. I kept my answer simple. We grew apart. I didn't tell them about the stage, the lights, the applause. I didn't tell them how an audience had watched my marriage end while thinking they were being inspired. Months later, I saw a clip from the panel shared online. Thousands of views. Comments praising her courage. I watched it once. Then I closed the window. I understood something then that I hadn't before. Endings don't always happen in private. Sometimes they happen publicly, neatly packaged, applauded by strangers. But survival happens quietly. It happens when you stop trying to defend yourself to people who never asked for the truth. It happens when you walk away from a story where you were only ever a prop. My wife let an audience witness the end. But she didn't get to decide what came after. That part was finally mine.